Hi, my name is Mick Nolen, and I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer with Unravel Data. And I'm here today to talk about how Unravel can help you successfully migrate your big data workloads to a cloud environment. Who is Unravel, you may ask? Unravel is the APM tool for the big data stack. We serve two audiences within each of our customers. We provide visibility to your operations staff to understand the health and performance of the environment as a whole. We also produce insights, recommendations, and root cause analysis for individual application owners to optimize their apps for both time and cost savings, all delivered in a single pane of glass. But today we're going to focus on our cloud migration capabilities. And oftentimes this presents a lot of challenges to our customers when they make that decision to move into a cloud platform. The main three challenges we see are cluster visibility, getting an understanding of how the environment's being used today from a performance aspect, as well as a timing aspect, and when am I busy? These kind of things are often very obscured in the tools that are delivered with the platforms. The next aspect is our cloud configurations. Across all of the cloud platforms, there are many options to choose from, whether you're choosing infrastructure as a service or a platform as a service, such as EMR in AWS, or maybe it'll be Databricks in Azure. All of these are options that we help our customers manage. And then the last piece is there's many challenges after you've moved to a cloud providers, because you start getting your insights and you need to make sure that you've made the right choices, or do I need to augment things after the move? So let's take a look at what migrations look like today before Unravel. First off, you're going to have to do some kind of an assessment. A lot of our customers do work with system integrators who will hand them a worksheet and give it to their staff to go populate and say, what's going on in my environment? How many Spark applications are running for this particular workload? What tables is it used? What do the queries look like? And are there things I need to migrate to another platform when I make that move? So once you've got all that assessed, hopefully you've gotten it all done in an easy amount of time, because that does take an awful lot of legwork to go and research and determine, what all of those things are, and it's awful error prone. Then luckily, if you're lucky, you'll get to the moving day where you forklift your data into the cloud and you start running all your apps there. And then you're chugging along nicely until you get that first bill. So maybe that bill is not what you expected it to be. Typically, in a lot of customers, it's a lot higher than they expect. So we're trying to get ahead of that game and de-risk that move by providing informational insights to say, hey, here's what would look better for your data in the cloud. And let's see what that looks like. So we are going to start with our cluster discovery. And our cluster discovery is a base part of our product. If you're already using Unravel for your on-premises environment, you have this already. It gives you the full details of, what my cluster is being used for, what kinds of applications, how close am I to hitting the thresholds, the capacity of my environment, as well as getting those insights and recommendations for applications I'm already running, which you're already using to optimize that to best case scenario in your on-prem environment. We then provide you a cloud mapping to say, what kind of platform would you like to move into? What would be the right kind of virtual machines to be on? What kind of storage should I be using? We give you the opportunity to run those reports in multiple different ways to really answer all of the questions of, where should I be moving to, which cloud provider, or should it be IaaS or PaaS? And then lastly, we want to ensure that when you're in a cloud, you're continuing to validate, manage, and optimize your applications that have moved. So let's hop into a demo and take a quick look at the product. So our operational dashboard here is what the operations team would see by default. We're not going to dive into this too much today. We're going to focus mainly on our migration reports, but this does give that holistic overview of all of my resource usage, my apps that are running within this past time frame, as well as a list of the inefficient applications I've discovered. And then over on the right are my policy violations, which are initiated by our auto actions. And we'll get into that a little bit later. So our migration reports start with that cluster discovery. So this is a full summary of what we've got in this environment. It's on-prem, it's an HTTP version. We can see we've got 142 nodes. Here's the particular services that are running. Down below, we can see we're using about 40 terabytes of memory, about 4,000 vCores. In the center, I can see my usage charts by application type, by user, and by queue. Each of those aspects are amongst the aspects you can use for our reporting within Unravel. Over on the right-hand side, we can see our CPU and memory utilization. In this environment, you can see we're pretty well underutilized, a little more CPU bound than memory bound. And then down in the bottom right-hand corner for the past couple of weeks, we can see what our average usage has been. This heat map shows the intensity of usage for each of those hours across a week by comparison within the rest of that week. So we can see from a memory perspective, we're not as bound, but if we look at the CPU chart, we're much more CPU bound in this environment. And I can tell that I've got more CPU used on the weekend and during the middle part of the day. Great functionality for figuring out when new workloads should be applied to this environment, whether you're on-prem or in the cloud. So when you run the migration reports, you have options as to what platform I want to choose. Customers often not sure which cloud to go into, and we can give them that cost projection for what they've got today. So we can see here that we've got, our IaaS options. So if you want to run VMs in Google or EC2 or Azure, and the others are our PaaS options. So if I want to run EMR, Insight, Databricks, Dataproc, I just pick the option I'd like, and within that platform, I can choose what region I'm in. So if I need to check Asia Pac versus North America or Europe, I can do that. And then over here on the side, we've got our storage type. So you can pick locally attached or object storage. Down below, you can select the actual VMs you want to attempt to move into if you know specifically, or you can keep them all selected. And you'll note we do have the published cost here listed in our UI, but if you're paying a custom cost, and most of our customers have a negotiated rate for VMs, you can input that cost here as well. So when this report runs, it comes out with two different options. The first of which is going to be the lift and shift. And the lift and shift is when you take all of the capacity you have on-prem and duplicate it into the cloud. The times you would typically see this done would be for very critical workloads where they know they have bursting and they know there's going to be expansion and they need to have that capacity at the ready. They can't wait for it. But we'll see here that there's a certain cost to having that. And in this example, we're at about $472 per hour for cost. Down below, you can see the breakdown of instance types. So we can see we've got 50 of the top type here, and you can see how much RAM and cores it has. Down below, we have our one-by-one host breakdown, showing my host name, showing my actual usage, showing my capacity, and then showing my recommendation. And then in the far right, we've got our cost for that recommendation. So this is our lift and shift, but we also produced a cost reduction report. And you'll note the cost reduction report has dropped that from $460 an hour down to about $168. So that's about a 75% savings right off the bat. So we're not using all of the capacity of the environment. So if you want to recreate enough space for your current environment to run, you can do that. And then further down here, we see that breakdown one for one again, but this time it's comparing the actual usage, not the capacity, like in the previous example. But we have other ways to actually deliver this kind of information. We don't have to go whole environment. We might want to just move a single workload. Now that single workload could be identified by a job type, it could be a user, it could be a queue, or it could be any of our custom application tags. Our custom application tags are like tags in AWS. It's just a key value pair, and you assign what you want it to be. In this example, I've got my high priorities selected, as well as my platform team for this graph, and you'll see the usage there. And over on the right, we can see the heat map for just those particular workloads. So we could also switch that over to memory to see the same kind of understanding. So similar to the cluster overall, but this one's more granular, giving us just specific workloads that are going to be migrated. So down below at this report, which was run for Azure Insight, and notice that we've got some object storage as well as some locally attached storage selected. We've got a certain value that's come out. So if we want to maintain 100% SLA for these applications or workloads, it's going to cost us $212 an hour. But if this is a lower priority workload that could say handle an 85 or even an 80% workload, we could see that the cost drop down, about $20, about another 10% down to 196 an hour. So it gives us, a decision to make and the right information to make that decision about what do we want to be moving into that cloud platform. And so what's really the right decision for my organization? Another option you have in this report is the comparison for an auto scale cluster. So you can see our usage over time, similar to the heat map above, gives us an understanding of when our peaks and valleys are and if it would make sense for an auto scaling cluster to be right for us. And in this example, that actually dropped down the cost a little bit more. So you could drop that about another 20 or 18% here. So down to $172 in this particular example. So next, let's talk about the data in your environment, which is critically important to most customers. We do have a data insights piece that delves into how that data is getting used. And one of the associations that you're going to need to know when you move individual applications into that cloud platform is the data that it runs on. We do start with an overview of our data. And one of the things that I've witnessed customers learn firsthand, I'll give you a great example. We had a customer who had 80,000 tables, and they found out that 30,000 of them hadn't been touched in over 3 years, hadn't been read in over 3 years. And so that's the kind of insights that you need to have when you're moving into a data platform in a cloud, because all of that memory all of that storage per minute costs you, and you don't want to put that into primary storage. You want to pick a cheaper option. That cheaper option may even be keeping it on-prem in historical data stores. So you really kind of have to pick and choose, from this detail on what you want to use. I am going to drill down to the details here because we give even more insights about these specific tables. So if I drill down to a specific table and get more info, I'm going to see right away which applications are actually using this data. So this is the full list, full application detail of all the applications that are touching this data. And I can see how many apps, how many users, all at my fingertips, all in the same single pane of glass that you're already using Unravel in for your on-premises environment today. So next, let's take a quick look at the capacity forecasting report. So this is showing me my usage over the past 150 days and my projection beyond that. So we're seeing some pretty steady usage of memory and CPU in this environment. But one thing you'll notice is a huge jump in my HDFS trend. So this is projecting out about 2 months out, we're going to hit that breaking point of exceeding what our capacity is for this particular environment. Deep insights that are necessary for when you're going to be planning to move into a cloud. Do I have growth in my HDFS as well as my CPU and memory? And this is what we deliver in this visualization. So next, let's talk about what happens when you actually get that move done. You're going to have application owners coming to you telling you, hey, I think my stuff's running slower. I need you to go check it out. And Unravel provides that functionality out of the box with our workflow analysis. And what a workflow is an understanding of an application running over time, or it could be a collection of applications running over time that make up a single instance of a workflow. And how has that been behaving? And we can compare side by side for those runs. So I've picked a workflow here. We actually pick up workflows automatically from some of the engines that are out there. So Oozie and Airflow we pick up automatically, but we've got customers who have NiFi as well as Control M that actually feed in workflows as well. So we can customize that to really pick up anything we need. What we're seeing here is multiple workflows, and I can click on any of these data points and pull up the workflow for that time frame. So I'm going to pick up the bounds, the first and the last in this view, and I can see that these two workflows, the first one is the older one. It ran in about 2 minutes and 17 seconds. And then down below, we've got a duration of 1:30 here. So I'm seeing that my one that's run more recently has actually run faster. So this reinforces that, it's certainly not our cloud that's been a problem. Let's maybe go check out, what failed in this application the last time, or if we want to pick another run, we can certainly do that as well. I can also check, the number of the amount of I/O that's happened for this particular application, if that's what I want to view. But I've got a lot of options here as to what pieces of these applications I want to see. So next, let's talk about that application view of what an application owner is going to see when they get into Unravel, because we want them to be able to be as self-service as possible, because that's very critical in cloud platforms, because you typically don't give them logins to any of those tools. You want them just to be able to view things maybe, but in some places those aren't even possible. Some of the cloud providers don't make it easy for them to see things like the application logs, and those are critical for them to understand, to be able to do root cause analysis, or have in there, and we'll show you how Unravel handles that. So in the application view, which is typically controlled via RBAC controls from a customer's LDAP environment or SAML, whatever you have, and then you can filter this view down to exactly what they need to be seeing. You'll notice on the left-hand side here, we have the ability to filter this view down. So right now I'm just looking at MapReduce and Spark jobs. I'm looking at all statuses, and then there's those tags again that I talked about. So if I want to filter my view by just a certain department, you could use this for flight status if you're an airline, or maybe if you're a retailer, you could use this for a region that you're selling in. So North America, South America, Europe. You can pick and choose what you want this delineation to be, because every organization has their own. Down below, we've got standard, queue, user, and cluster. And cluster is very important in a cloud environment, because we typically see a lot of ephemeral environments when you get to the cloud space. Those clusters spin up, they run a job, and then they go away, and that data is lost. The metadata about the jobs are gone, so you don't have the log files anymore. Unravel captures that in real time, and also does our analysis with our sensor data, where we're actually collecting metrics from within all of the containers, so that we can use those to provide our recommendations. And our recommendations are really easy to notice here in the UI. You can see this column here with these tools icon. That's indicating that we've had particular recommendations on this job, and a user could drill down into that, and we'll get into that here in just 1 minute. There's another icon you might notice here. It's a little bell. That's our policy violation icon, and what that tells me is that this application is violating some sort of rule I set up in our auto actions. And our auto actions are the mechanism we have to say, hey, I want to make sure if something happens with a particular application, I either want to take an action by moving it to another queue, or maybe killing it, or maybe I want to reach out to another piece of my environment and open up an incident in ServiceNow, or maybe I want to send a PagerDuty message out. It just depends on what I do in my environment. Unravel gives you that ability to really work with everything in your environment to make this as automated as possible. And next, let's take a look at that question that you first get once you get to the cloud is, who do I need to worry about? And we have this top X report. X could be top 10, it could be top 30, whatever parameter you give it when you run the report. And this will show me a summary broken down by application type. If I scroll down, I can see my longest duration jobs, highest disk I/O, highest cluster usage. Let's drill down on this highest memory usage and take a look at what an application individually would look like in Unravel. So you see we have all the information that's pertinent to this application. What queue did it run in? What cluster was it on? When did it run? How much data? How long did it take? As well as the actual Hive query itself is right here in the UI. So this really helps your application owners very quickly to figure out what's going on with this job, because they don't have to go back and forth to another UI. They've got it all right here in front of them. So we see that one of the MR jobs within this application has failed. We can drill down on that and get the detail there. I can drill down into the errors that this application had. So back to those log messages being gone from an ephemeral cluster in cloud environments, critically important to capture this information before that thing goes away. Because if this thing ran over the weekend and I didn't get those logs, they're gone now. There's no retrieving them. So I have no way to diagnose this application other than to look for it in logs like here in Unravel. So this gives me the full breakout here of the errors and the warnings and the criticals, but even if I need the granular detail of everything in the log, those are incorporated into the UI for failed applications as well. So I've got all of that detail as far as, what does this application look like, and can really get my root cause analysis, as well as those recommendations we talked about earlier. So I can see here we've got 3 different types in this example. we've got config recommendations, and those are very concrete changes that could be made to the execution of this particular Hive query of settings that the application owner could do. So we're going to set parallelism to true. We're going to increase the number of reducers here. We're going to decrease the input split size and a couple other options as well. And these are just part of the recommendations that Unravel makes, because we also make some efficiency recommendations here where we give a little more plain English explanation as to why Unravel is saying this based off of what it's gathered. And it gathers that through a few different places. So the log files, we're talking to the UIs, and then we're also collecting our own sensor data that get embedded into the applications that give us the insight to understand things like, hey, you allocated 40 gig of RAM, but you only used 2 of it. And those are the kind of things that need to be done at the application level, and then propagated back to the user so that they can really be a good citizen in the environment, because that's what makes up all of these environments. And whether you're on-prem or in the cloud, you need to have a good eye on that, and everybody needs to be responsible for what they're executing. Next, let's talk a little bit about the auto actions that we have available to us. Our auto actions is where we want to set up a policy that when it's violated, we have something happen. And this is about getting ahead of the game and preventing outages and issues from getting to the user and us taking care of them beforehand. This example happens to be a resource contention issue. So I can filter down on any aspect of the data we're collecting. So if I want to check on memory, if I want to check on CPU, if I want to check on number of mappers, that's all available to me. And I can create whatever kind of complex rule I need to here. I can also filter it down by any of the aspects. So if I need to set up just for a specific queue, a specific user, everybody except a specific user, and I can put in a regex here as well. So I can really get as precise as I need to, or as general as I need to for this particular rule. I can pick cluster, application name. So I've got a lot of options. And then down at the bottom, we have our actions, which start with the basics of sending out an email message, maybe hooking into somebody else's API. As I mentioned earlier, we could hook into PagerDuty, we could hook into Salesforce and open a ticket, whatever your application you use for your ITSM platform, ServiceNow, Remedy. There's a myriad of those out there, and we really provide that functionality to be able to communicate that way. Slack is a built-in option as well. And then the last three really let you have a lot of power in what you do. So moving the app to another queue, maybe you want to put it into a high priority queue because it hasn't met its SLA. Or conversely, maybe you want to put it into a penalty queue because it's taking too many resources and you don't want to kill it yet, but you don't want it to disturb anybody else's in the main queue. And then you've got the option to actually kill the app. And that's, obviously the most heavy-handed you could do, but in some environments, when you see an application that's been running for 22 hours and you can identify it by name, you go ahead and kill it because it's not going to finish any faster. So lots of options to be proactive in these environments. And this will help ensure not just a healthy environment running, whether you're, have already made the move to cloud or you're still on-prem, but it really helps keep that cost down in the cloud, because the cloud costs, are by the minute. So if we can reduce, one application not running for an extra 12 hours, that's going to save us cost. And for every application we do that, that's, multiplies up and saves us at the end of that month. So next, let's talk about the reporting that we get. We've got a lot of reporting built into Unravel to give you, the kind of understanding you need to know about your environment. Here, we're looking at the executive report overview. So just a summary of overall apps in the environment, how many were successful, how many were failed, what does my, IO look like, as well as my Unravel events, which you're seeing here. So this is how many events Unravel has seen across all of the applications for this particular duration. CPU and memory usage as well, node counts, how they've been behaving, and then down here we've got our HDFS capacity and forecasting report. So we can see that same chart we were looking at earlier where we're trending up and we're going to need to worry about getting more resources. Then down below we've got a breakdown, Yarn customers by project, by application, by user, by queue, as well as in this example our Impala job. So really a good full overview understanding to make sure that we really understand how we've been spending our resources in this environment, and do I need to take some kind of actions to address that. And then lastly, we need to have that understanding of exactly who's using that. And we have this built-in chargeback report, which actually allows you to calculate, or calculates for you, I should say, who's been using the environment from an application count, CPU hours, or memory hours perspective. And you can populate the value that you're spending for that particular cluster into this UI. And this works for your on-premise as well, same way as it does here in cloud. So then you can generate and see who's at the top of this list. And then it gets down even further, more and more granular. So I could break this down by user after I break it down by application type. And then down at the bottom actually gives me that full list of applications, which is sortable, exportable. So if I want to see it and then send it out to the team so they know, hey, here's who's using the most memory and here's what it's costing us. And there's nothing that motivates behavior more than being told, hey, you're using more resources than anybody in this cluster and it's costing us real money. And it really does get people's attention. And that's one thing that people forget about cloud environments. Once you move into a cloud environment, you really have given license to spend. You no longer have any kind of signing authority necessary. In fact, people who don't have the purchasing power to buy a pack of gum on behalf of the company can now spend $100,000 on application CPU and memory with the click of a button. And they won't know till the end of the month, and you won't know until weeks after that. And so at that point, it's too late. Another thing that you could use those auto actions for is get out ahead of the game, and when somebody starts spending money, CPU and memory resources, about it. And so that's one of the big takeaways here is understanding fully what's going on in that environment. Getting that complete visibility is something that's required, whether you've already moved to the cloud or you're about to move to the cloud. You've really got to understand who's using it, who's spending it, and most importantly, what can I do to reduce those costs. So I think that's in the summary here. We've shown complete visibility of the environment. We've talked about how Unravel gets the data to do successful mapping to those cloud platforms. And then most critically, once you've had that move done, you have ongoing monitoring, validation, as well as optimization of those resources that you've spent to really give you the understanding that you've done the right thing in the right cloud provider. And if not, you can always go back and check and see another one and see if it makes more sense. So thank you for your time today. Once again, my name is Mick Nolen with Unravel Data. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to us at unraveldata.com, or you can contact me directly here at mick@unraveldata.com.